Okay, we are a go. We are streaming. Let me tweet out the link. I am 1 minute early, but that's okay. I know a lot of you are probably wrapped up in the NHL playoffs right now, where the Bolts are fighting the Caps. It's 1-0 Capitals. I admittedly did not know that the game was going on until about 30 minutes ago, but I already committed. Or 30, that's probably an hour ago, but I already committed to starting at 9. And so I'm starting at 9, and I have the feed up of the game right here on my computer screen so we can watch it together. I don't obviously know a whole lot about hockey, clearly, or else I would not have scheduled my live stream, um, like during game 7 of the conference finals. But I'm happy to root on the Bolts with you guys. I'm totally in. I definitely like watching playoff hockey. So I definitely will be all in if they make the if when they make the Stanley Cup Finals. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining in with me, even though you have the whole the hockey playoffs thing going on, and I don't mean to kind of throw it under the bus. I really I wish I could get into hockey. I live in Atlanta. We had the Thrashers here, and then they moved, and that just like kind of just took me out of hockey. But I do love rooting for the Lightning from afar. So totally go Bolts. Let's do this. Um, hey, thanks, Mr. Bucks Nation, and thanks to you guys for coming in. Thanks to James and everybody and Bang 10 We Trust. Fade Ennis, I've seen you before. Thanks for coming. Thanks for listening to Mr. Bucks Nation. I promise I'm here. We are here to talk about Buccaneers, and we'll keep an eye on the game on top of that. So yeah, thanks, James. It is a party, Mr. Bucks Nation. Hey, we can talk Lightning if you guys want to. Again, I don't know a whole lot about it, but it's a good time to chat Bucks while they are in a period break. So I thought I'd kick things off by asking you guys how you became Bucks fans. I tried to tell my story on the last stream, but I had so many technical difficulties. On my third attempt, I just was tired of telling my story. But here we are this week. I'll tell you guys real quick. How did I become a Bucks fan? I started in the 90s, in 1996. And that was, as you probably remember, is around the time that the Glazers bought the team. Tony Dungy became head coach, and they changed the uniforms. Was it jumping on the bandwagon? A little bit, but I was also like 10, 11 years old. So that was just around the time I started to like football, watch football. I do remember in the early 90s living in St. Petersburg, how horrible the Bucs were, the laughingstock that they were, and thinking about how terrible of a football team they were, and just like having not even followed sports, I just knew that they were bad. But then I started liking football and got these cool, badass new uniforms, new logo, new head coach. It was a time to jump on, and man, I'm so glad that I did. And then by the time 1999 rolled around, we moved to Atlanta, and I was surrounded by Falcons fans, and the Bucs were in the NFC Championship game, and man, I was just totally bought in. When they lost the championship game, NFC Championship game to the Rams, thanks to the stupid Bert Emanuel non-catch, it ruined my night. It ruined my week, and I was so upset. But that was when I knew I had become a full-fledged Bucs fan. So late 90s when I became Bucs fan. How did you guys become Bucs fans? Where are you from? Are you from the Tampa Bay area, and that's why you joined in and you jumped on the ship? I have been a fan of this team, and I obviously chose the right time. When they won the Super Bowl, I was in high school, again, surrounded by Falcons fans, and it was glorious. And I have been waiting to get back to that moment ever since. So, dude, thank you, Mr. Bucks Nation, once again for getting all these guys in. After party, I like calling it that amazement. So, Louis Taggart, you said you were born in Tampa. I'm sure that's the story for most of you guys. I lived in Tampa. I lived in St. Petersburg from 1991 until 1999. So that was right when I was a kid, and that's obviously the perfect time to get into sports, which I did, and got into the Bucs. Blue Boater. My dad has been a fan since the team joined the league, and I've been a fan of my whole life. That's awesome, man. I mean, props to your dad who dealt with basically 20 years of misery. We're on about year 10 of misery, but maybe longer than that, honestly. But major props to him. And yeah, Mason said I couldn't sleep for days after that Rams 99 loss. Guys, that actually was pivotal in my sports fandom. When the Bucs lost that game, I was so distraught. I finally was just like, this sucks. I am never going to let one game affect me this much emotionally. And you might, if you followed these live streams for a while, if you've followed my opinions for a while, I try to take emotions out of it. I know some other people like to go the emotional route, and that's cool if that's your thing. But for me, emotions get in the way of facts and logic. So I try to, and obviously emotions are great, especially coming off a loss or coming off of a huge win. I'm not saying be a robot, but it's great when you can take a loss and look at it from a 50,000 foot view instead of saying fire everyone, which is what we like to do. So, Fade Annis was born in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and met a Bucs fan at a restaurant when I was little, and his little Bucs fan recruitment speech stuck with me. And a couple years later, my dad happens to get stationed at Tampa. That's a great story, Fade. That's awesome. In Wyoming, and a random Bucs, and Bucs fans, even in Atlanta, I get this. There are Bucs fans. You're a Bucs fan. You're a diehard. No, they're like, I've never met a Bucs fan before, but man, we're everywhere, and especially because of the guys out west. Is it the Buckaholics out west? Man, they're making our presence felt, and I love it. I love it. Dude, that Rams game catch, you say it was rigged. I mean, by the rule at the time, that was not a catch, and that's why they changed the rule, and that's what started the snowballing of changing the rule every year about what a catch is and isn't. So you can actually probably blame that game and Bert Emanuel for the ridiculousness that the catch rule became, and they eventually changed it this offseason. But hey, let's talk more about Bucs. OTAs have started, or nothing, no opinions really that can be garnered from OTAs and nobody getting tackled. But is there anybody who's been hyped that you guys are excited to see this year? I personally am excited to see Chris Godwin. I know if you guys haven't checked it out yet, Trevor Sikkim on Pewter Report wrote a huge article. I haven't even finished it all yet, just of Chris Godwin going game by game and really diving deep into who Chris Godwin is as a receiver and what he can become, and it's got me excited, man. I'm a huge Chris Godwin fan, and I can't wait to see him step up. I know he's still stuck behind Djax, but it's probably best for him because, man, he's going to explode. Whether Djax gets injured, God forbid, or we find creative ways to get him in the slot or different packages, I'm excited about having Chris Godwin. He's becoming my favorite player from last year's draft. So let's do some more stories. Amazement. I became a fan when they made that pop the year we started out 5-0, I think, when we got a new look. They set the tone that season, knocking off the Niners with Young and Rice. Was that 97, 98? I mean, that was when this defense came and made a statement. That game, man, knocking out Steve Young. And this was Steve Young, Jerry Rice, Niners. They're coming pretty fresh off Super Bowl win in a couple years. And the Bucs go in there and just beat them down. Man, what a statement game that was. I'm waiting for this team to have that kind of statement game. I was hoping it was going to come last year against the Patriots, but well, we all know how that turned out. Andy, I am excited to see Noah Spence not have to be on the field 24/7 and come in as a pass rush specialist. I completely agree with you, Andy, and there's just not enough that can be said about this revamped defensive line and the job that Light did bringing in all these players. That helps Noah Spence so much. We don't have to lean into him to be an everything guy. We can actually use him the way that he is best used, which is pass rush specialist, and he can learn behind guys, and he doesn't have to play every play, and he can recoup from his shoulder surgeries. And yeah, he's a role player, but man, he could be a huge win if he lives up to his potential. So I am low-key excited about Spence. I say low-key just because he hasn't shown anything yet, but there's been flashes here and there, and I think if his shoulder holds up, man, he could be a huge just like back pocket pass rusher that everybody forgot about, and he can explode. How much do you think the new tackle rule will make offenses look amazing this year? Yeah, I think every year comes new rules about tackling and targeting and lowering heads. And offenses are just going to take off, guys. And I know we've spent a lot on our defense, but, man, the rules they are incorporating are really handicapping what we can do, what defenses can do to stop these high-powered offenses. But it's been a trend that's going to continue. unfortunately, because of concussions and the CBA and all that stuff. It's funny to see players complain about the rule when it was made, but it was the Players Association and their like hard push against the NFL and all the lawsuits and stuff against concussions. I mean, what do you expect the NFL to do? They're protecting themselves. So it's unfortunate, and it'll be interesting to see. But you know what? It's a pendulum. Hopefully, it'll swing back the other way. Became a fan when they beat the Raiders in the Super Bowl and never looked back. Danny D, yeah, that's a good time to jump on / a bad time because then you peaked, right? And peaked at the top moment. Man, that when we won the Super Bowl, guys, I was living in Atlanta and waved my Bucs flag from my car the rest of the school year. I was a junior in high school, man, and it was just so amazing being up here for that. Mr. Bucs Nation, I've been a fan since around 5 years old. I remember my family partying when they won the Super Bowl and my dad getting mad when Bruce Gradkowski was the starting QB. Oh, man, Bruce Gradkowski. That was the love to collect his quarterbacks. So, anyway, that's interesting. Amazing. Like I told Mr. Bucs, I want to see Jones this season. We haven't had an RB that can take it to the house and forever. I completely agree with you. That is, and if you guys have followed the kind of collabs that Mr. Bucs Nation and I have done, I mentioned to him I was hesitant on Rojo just because, and maybe it's because I'm so used to having guys like Cadillac, having guys like Doug Martin who are more bruisers and could get chased down from behind, but they could get those chunk yardage. I'm excited. I'm excited to see a home run threat. I'm just hopeful that that's not all he is. And I've heard conflicting reports. Some people think that is all he is. Some people think no, he can rough it out and shed tackles. So definitely his highlights. I've seen some good things of him shedding tackles and bursting through line when the hole wasn't that big. So I cannot wait to see Rojo. And guys, I'm excited to see Rojo and Peyton Barber combo. Like, I think Peyton Barber's going to have a much bigger role than we're expecting. I think Rojo's going to be a 1-2, and then the 3-punch is going to be Peyton Barber. So I think he's earned his stripes. I think he's earned his playing time. So the combination of those guys, I'm really interested in seeing if they can complement each other. I'm also interested in seeing what we do with Charles Sims. Re-signing him was kind of confusing. I would hate for us to put him in every time we have a passing down. You know what I'm saying? It's such a tip-off to defenses when we have Charles Sims in there. Andy, I did not want John Gruden. Here he is, never good with young teams, always gets old players, and said Manziel and Tebow were going to be stars. I mean, that's true, man. He picked up Jordy Nelson. As soon as he did that, I just laughed and shook my head. I'm like, that's such a Gruden move, trying to get the old aging guys in there. Although it worked for him their Super Bowl year, man. I mean, well, maybe it wasn't so much the aging guys, but he picked up. He overhauled this offense in his first offseason. Picked up Joe Juravicius, picked up Keenan McCardell. I mean, that was huge. Picked up Michael Pittman. So I got to hand it to him. I'm super interested in following the Raiders this year, just seeing how that all turns out. I would not be surprised to see them actually do really well this year under the new system. I'm interested in seeing Gruden, for the first time I've ever seen, have a young quarterback that's a proven starter. Carr didn't do that well last year, but he was an MVP candidate 2 years ago. So I wonder if Gruden can really play to his strengths. And I mean, it's dangerous if he has a quarterback that can. I mean, imagine if John Gruden had, and you might laugh, imagine if John Gruden had Jeff Garcia when Jeff Garcia was in his 20s. I felt like this offense was really exciting when we had Jeff Garcia and Joey Galloway. If we had them when they were in their 20s, it would have been quite the sight to see, this offense. So, Rick H., I always felt Gruden won the Super Bowl with the team Dungy built. Rick H., that's actually a sticking point that we could debate till years in. I'm actually planning a video next month that touches on that. So I haven't written it yet, so I might change my mind. But I'm going to. I'm thinking about doing a video next month that touches on that very opinion, and trying to finally settle once and for all that debate. Spoiler alert: I actually don't really agree with you, but we'll dive into that with the whole Gruden won with Dungy's team. One thing I will say is that Dungy couldn't win with Dungy couldn't win with Dungy's team. So even if that was true, it's still kind of an indictment on Dungy. And if you saw my last live stream, you know how much I love Tony Dungy. He is my hero. So anyway, that's nothing against him. What if we go to Super this Danny, what if we go to the Super Bowl this year against the Raiders? That was my first thought when I heard that Gruden might go to the Raiders. Like, that is a nightmare scenario. I do not want to see it. Could you imagine if we lost to Gruden and the Raiders in the Super Bowl? Like, that's so poetic that I just feel like it has to happen if we end up playing each other. And that scares me. Like, I don't want to think about it, just like you. John Gruden's teams do good for the first couple of years, but once his old players start falling off, he never replaces them with young talent. Yeah, and the draft that John Gruden had was a big head scratcher to a lot of people, and I know those of us who really followed the team back in his Bucs years, Gruden was not a great drafter, and I think that was a big sticking point for the Glazers, is they love Jason Light, and I bet you that Gruden wanted total control. And I mean, obviously the price tag was too large. 10 million or 10 years, $100 million. 10 years, $100 million contract was way too much. But I bet you Gruden wanted to rule with an iron fist, and that thankfully the Glazers said no to that. So I think we're good where we are, guys. I think we're good. And I love Gruden. That's nothing against Gruden. It's just let's just move forward. Let's go forward. I did buy into the hype a little bit. I did get a little excited about Dungy because I did love Dungy. Dungy completely built a Colts team around Peyton and won a Super Bowl. I mean, that's true, man. When Tony Dungy went to the Colts, I was so excited for him. I was like, oh man, finally he can go to a team that has an offense and he can just let Peyton do what Peyton does, and he can concentrate on defense. That's what he did. I mean, and the Colts defenses were never as good as the Bucs defenses, but they did enough to get in there. And man, I was so happy for Tony when they won. I really was. I may not have been as happy had the Bucs not first won a Super Bowl, but I was super happy for them. Mr. Bucs Nation, I was full Gruden hype train. Yeah, you and I have had this conversation. We were starting to get swooped in there on the Gruden hype, but the season hasn't even come close to starting yet, and we're already like, yeah, on second thought and retrospect, it's probably good we didn't get him. All Dungy needed was a good offensive coordinator. Hey, what are you talking about, Rick? He had Mike Shula. Didn't he take the Panthers to the Super Bowl? That's totally. I'm being sarcastic there because Mike Shula, I have not been a fan of his ever since the late 90s when he was our offensive coordinator. So, where we're just basically shooting crap and we're just talking Bucs. I mean, really, these live streams are what are about you guys. They're about what you guys want to talk about, especially in these like dark ages, the dark period of the off season. I'm gonna supplement these with the high produced studio videos, which by the way, I'm so close to releasing another one. Hopefully it'll be done and out by this weekend. And it is a complete recap of all of our losses this past season, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. So I'm still doing the highly produced videos every single month about something, have questions, or just want to talk Bucs. That's what this is for. I have a microphone, you guys have a keyboard, but that's it, man. You know, we can keep chatting Bucs till the cows come home because I love doing it. So, Andy, I think John Gruden would be a good coordinator because I think on field he's a good coach, but draft and free agency isn't a strong point. Yeah, unfortunately, Gruden will never go back to being a coordinator unless he just completely fails to the point where no one wants to give him a head coaching job again. Kind of like Rex Ryan. If Gruden would have been a coach, would Jameis be QB since he loved playing old QBs? You know, I kind of wonder. Gruden showed, I mean, in Hard Knocks, you saw how fired up he was talking about Jameis Winston. And Gruden even said on Monday Night Football a lot. I mean, he praised Jameis Winston. The thing is, Gruden always praised players. So I wonder, as angry as John Gruden got on the sidelines and as pissed off as he got at his quarterbacks, if that would have been a good marriage between Gruden and Jameis, because Jameis just made some mistakes. However, what I would say is that Gruden grew up. He kind of cut his teeth on Brett Favre because he was part of that whole Favre Packers 90s era. He was part of that whole team. And Gruden loved Favre. And I think Jameis has a lot of similarities with Favre, where he would take risks and really just kill you with the turnovers, but he was such a gamer, he would just will you to win. And I think Jameis is capable of that, and I think Gruden definitely could have brought that out of him. And Jameis's psyche is one that can handle Gruden. Now, if you guys remember Chris Sims and Bruce Gradkowski, guys like that, they couldn't handle John Gruden. They couldn't handle. I mean, when you came into John Gruden's offense, he treated you like a straight up man. And I think that's why he got along better with veteran quarterbacks. Brad Johnson, Rich Gannon, Jeff Garcia, Brian Griese, guys like that succeeded under Gruden because they weren't coddled. They didn't need to be coddled. They knew their job and they did it. And I think Gruden couldn't mold younger players just because they had to be coddled a little bit, and that's just not what Gruden does. So again, I'll be interested in seeing what he does with Derek Carr. I'll subscribe so we can. I'll subscribe so we can just discuss things like this further. I've been a Bucs fan for 41 years, and I've been to over 100 Bucs home games. Rick, thanks so much for subscribing, man. That's awesome. And you've been a Bucs fan for longer than I have, so you have all the memories of the bad creamsicle days, which I don't. So I definitely value your opinion and your input, man. So swing by every Wednesday. Right now I'm doing a different time every Wednesday. I think I might hang on this 9 p.m. time, but follow me on Twitter at the Play Reaction, and I will always give you guys the start time the day of the live stream. So hang with me, and there's going to be more to come. And also the quality is going to get much better. I'm working on it, and I'm accumulating better equipment, so just stand by for that. Danny D, think Bucs defense will improve with the new talent we got? Absolutely, Danny, and people are kind of nervous about the secondary, specifically the safety position, but I've said this before. You build from the inside out, and that's what we did this offseason. We attacked the inside. We went with the defensive line and boosted that and bolstered it so well that I think we're going to see our secondary get back to the excitement that they had 2 years ago when you had guys like Keith Tandy making these huge interceptions. And the reason the Bucs hit this upswing 2 years ago is because the defensive line was getting to the quarterback. It was a completely different team. And we had guys like Keith Tandy, Chris Conti back there, and Vernon Hargraves in his rookie year. And so like that, I think, is going to be huge. Having the defensive line get to the court. If we can get to the quarterback, man, the rest is going to fall into place. So I'm very excited about this defense, and I might even draft them in fantasy this year. Maybe not. I don't want to jinx it. So amazement. I got my fantasy team on Johnson. I would name mine Carry On My Wayward John in parentheses son. But anyway, now that I think about it, John Gruden QB camps. I've never heard him say he doesn't like a QB. Yeah, I mean he likes everybody publicly. Which actually is a great thing about a coach. You want him to be a raving fan publicly and then a quiet critic privately. Now, he probably wasn't so quiet behind the scenes, but you get what I mean. Gruden verbiage was difficult to understand, too. That's a great point, Amazement. Gruden confused the heck out of the young guys. I mean, just the long... If you ever get a chance, look up probably just YouTube it or Google it, Gruden's, like an example of Gruden's plays in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's a clip of him talking to Chris Sims and just giving his, like, X zebra, Y short, Y banana, whatever it was. He gave his long list of the name of the play to Chris Sims, and Chris Sims had to go back and forth. He would try to say it in the huddle, and he just could not get it. And Gruden was livid. So look that up, YouTube. That if I had the link, I would give it to you. But I'm sure it's on YouTube somewhere. The great thing about going to the early year Bucs games, even when we were losing, was getting to see all the future Hall of Famers: Earl Campbell, Dorsett, Montana, Walter Payton. Yeah, super jealous about that, Rick. That would have been something to see, especially Montana and Peyton, man. That I'm sure that was awesome. And I'm sure that's why a lot of y'all went to the games during those years, was to see the other teams. That still kind of happens. Vita just needs to collapse the pocket in his first season. A defensive tackle, even more so. Defensive tackles are not supposed to get high number sacks. So let's temper our expectations. But the thing with Vita, too, I think if he got 5 to 6 sacks, it would be an incredible year for him. Mainly because I don't think he'll be starting. I think he'll be behind Mitch Unrein, and I think he'll be behind I'm blanking on the other guy we got. Sorry, you guys should probably say it in the chat. But and behind Gerald McCoy and dang it, what was his name? Either way, sorry. He'll be a rotational player, so we'll be selectively putting him in there. And if he takes advantage of those opportunities, he'll have 5 to 6 sacks. But I do think he'll be a big run stuffer, and we probably will see a quiet year statistically from him. But that's just fine as long as he shows up and shows improvement on the defensive line. It'll be great. Eric Castellanos. Hi, dude. My name is Eric from Tampa. How are you? I'm doing well, Eric. How are you doing? I'm glad you guys are joining me during the Lightning playoffs. Let me check on how the Lightning are doing. Still 1-0? Yeah, still 1-0. So again, thanks for joining me during this. Hope you guys are at least multitasking, rooting on the Bolts. Andy, the people who complained about us drafting DT are the same people who always wonder why the Eagles' D-line is so good. Their backups are Chris Long, Haloti, Ngata, and Derek Barnett. It's true. I mean, we just took 2 of their defensive linemen from them. I mean, that, like, and they'll be fine. And that's the thing is, man, I'm just so happy with the defensive line that we have. We have such depth. Guys are going to get hurt, and we'll be okay. That's unless, there's this Simpsons level, and I say a Simpsons reference to the softball episode from very old school, but if you've ever seen it, Mr. Burns builds a softball team of 9 Major League Baseball players, and he laughs, the only way we'll win, or the only way we'll lose if we have 9 just unforeseen circumstances, and sure enough, 8 of the 9 gets hilariously injured or taken out of the game somehow. So that kind of level, unfortunate circumstances. Bo Allen, thanks, Mr. Bucs Nation. Unless just everybody gets wiped out, we have great depth on the defensive line, and I'm not worried about them. It's great. I'm very giddy about this D line. Vinny Curry, and Vinny Curry on the outside. JPP. I mean, guys, we're stacked. The D line. We're stacked, and I know it's all on paper. And we've got to temper there's me bringing the emotions down. You see that? Yeah, we got to temper our expectations. But I think I'm going to cut it off here at 30 minutes, guys. Oh, it's 2-0 now? Dang it. Oh, man, the Caps must have just scored. Oh, yeah, there it is. I'm a little bit behind on the online stream. Not looking good, guys. On that note, I think I might just have to leave it here so we can watch the rest of the game. Thanks so much for joining, guys. Like I said, we'll be doing this every week, and it's just chatting Bucs. I mean, I'll come in here probably with a loose plan for some of these, but a lot of it is going to be dictated by you. So I really want you guys to join in, subscribe, tell your friends, follow on Twitter at The Play Reaction. You'll know when the live streams are up, and I love chatting on Twitter with you guys too. So if you're on Twitter, hit me up. I'd love to chat with you. And also more collaborations in the future with Mr. Bucs Nation. He's a really great guy. I'm glad you guys are following him because he and I are just on the same page with a lot of these opinions and stuff. And be on the lookout, hopefully this weekend, really highly produced video recapping this change, the biggest acquisition we had in this offseason. So excited about Buckner. Without him, I would only be mildly excited about this defensive line, but with him, I am so excited. So anyway, I'll see you guys next week, next Wednesday, right here, hopefully 9 p.m. If that changes, I'll let you know on Twitter. Until then, see you guys later, and go Bolts and go Bucs.